Um, Mike, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Thanks for doing this. Um, okay, let me share my screen, the presentation here. Okay, so everybody should have that presentation up. It should say the original Wheeze Kids across the top of the screen. Can everybody see that? Can you see it, Pierre?
Yes.
Just nod your head. Okay, cool. I guess we're up and running. Um, I this um, I wrote a couple articles about this game in the past. Um, and this subtitle here, Mythical Willie Mays Triple, a Matinee Hero, and Some Bored Cub Scouts, was the title of one of those articles. Um, and of course, the title for tonight is the original Wheeze Kids. All of those phrases will become clear to you as we go along. But of course, this is about this Giants game, Phillies Giants game at Connie Mack Stadium, Saturday afternoon, July 16th, 1966. I attended the game, but until a couple of years ago, I didn't know the date of the game, the score, who won, or how many innings. I just remembered that I attended a game in the mid 60s against the Giants. I went with a bunch of Cub Scouts from my local Cub Scout pack. I think there were 8 or 9, maybe 10 of us. It was on a weekend afternoon. I knew that because I knew they wouldn't take us out of school to go to a Phillies game. And I knew it went extra innings because the Cub Scouts were really tired and really happy when the game was finally over. And and I thought I saw Willie Mays hit a triple in the game. This was a cherished memory of mine. And over the years, I would mention this to people that I saw Willie Mays hit a triple. This was really important to me because, of course, Willie Mays is so great, one of the best players of all time, the quintessential five-tool player. I remember we were sitting on the third base side of the stadium, so Mays would have slid toward us. I assume we were in the upper level. Um, as I said, I mentioned to a few people over the years that I saw Willie Mays hit this triple, and over the years this became sort of this mythical event to me. And someone who's actually on this Zoom mentioned that I could probably find the game in Baseball Reference and look at the box score and figure out if I actually saw Mays hit a triple. So I looked, and it was fairly easy to find. Baseball Reference has pages of every game from a particular season for a team, and it looks like this. Here's a screen capture from that page, the Baseball Reference page from the 1966 Phillies. So it's a listing of every game with a link to the box score and the actual score, the Phillies' record at the time, their rank and the number of games behind, the winning pitchers, the time, the attendance. It's a pretty neat thing. And you, as I said, you click the box score link and it'll bring up the box score for the particular game. So the really essential thing is here, it was the Phillies at home against the Giants, and it went a lot of extra innings. And we see in the innings column here, this is the only one that has a number that is 15 innings. If it went 9 innings, then apparently they don't put the innings in the column. So this was the only game in 60, 65, 66, and 67 that went that many innings against the Giants on a weekend. And I clicked the box score link and discovered that the game started at 1:37. So it was easy to find the game. Now, okay, one thing you'll notice here is there was a game on Sunday, July 10th, and then there wasn't another game until Thursday, July 14th. And what obviously happened there is the All-Star break. Yes. So this series between the Phillies and the Giants at Connie Mack was the first series after the All-Star break. So let's take a look for a minute, one slide about that All-Star game. You can see, whoops, it happened on July 12th, Tuesday, July 12th, at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Busch Stadium, the second Busch Stadium, which was brand new that year. It was one of those big concrete ovals, just like Vet Stadium. It was the first year it had opened, so they had the All-Star game there. And by the way, at game time, it was 103 degrees. They started the game at noon. All-star games were in the afternoon back then. They weren't, primetime TV games back then. You'll notice the Giants had 6 players in that All-Star game. Mays, McCovey, Marichal, and Gaylord Perry, of course. And then Tom Holler, who was having a great season, was their catcher. This says DNP, did not play in the All-Star game, by the way. And Jim Ray Hart, who was normally their third baseman, pinch hit, went 0 for 1. The Phillies had Dick Allen and Jim Bunning in the game. And by the way, this asterisk indicates those are future Hall of Famers. So in the Phillies-Giants series, 6 future Hall of Famers. And just to close out this All-Star game business, you see Denny McLain and Sandy Koufax were the starting pitchers. And the NL won 2-1 in 10 innings. And Maury Wills singled home Tim McCarver for the winning run. So it was that ended the game. So pretty exciting way to end that game. There were very few hits in that game, by the way. And the MVP was Brooks Robinson. Even though he was for the losing team, he had the most hits, and he made a couple great plays over at third. That was Brooks Robinson's thing, right? Okay. Whoops. At the All-Star break, the Phillies were in 4th place. As you can see, 46 and 39, 7 games back. The Giants were in 1st place. They had really been on a great streak through April, May, and June. They won a lot of games. In July, they didn't do so well. They were just treading water. But they built up a bit of a lead, 54 and 33, but they were only up 1 game on the Pirates at the time. You see the LA Dodgers here in 3rd place. They eventually won the division. Hope that's not a spoiler. But one interesting thing you'll note here is the Phillies had actually scored more runs than the Giants. The Giants 370, the Phillies 375 at this point in the season. Plus, the Phillies had given up fewer runs than the Giants. So it's kind of weird, but apparently the Giants were using their runs effectively to get 54 wins out of fewer runs and more runs allowed than the Phillies. Kind of weird, but that's how it went. Okay, so since the whole reason this presentation is happening is because of Willie Mays and this triple, I thought I'd talk about Willie Mays for a moment. In 66, he was 35 years old. He had a 288 batting average that year with 37 home runs and 103 RBIs. But that wasn't a great season for Willie Mays. In 65, he had an MVP year, 317, 52 home runs, and 112 RBIs. His other MVP year was in 54. He also won Gold Gloves every year from 57 through 68. I believe that count adds up to 12 years in a row he wins the Gold Glove. All-Star every year from 54 to 72. And he retired in 73 with the Mets at age 42. For some reason, the Giants, I didn't investigate it, but for some reason, the Giants actually traded him in 1969 to the Mets. I don't know who would do that. That should be, that general manager should have to go to hell for that. Should never trade players like Willie Mays. At any rate, I wanted to try to find a picture of the play of Willie Mays sliding into third base during this game that I attended, and I was not able to do it. I was only able to find one photo of Willie Mays sliding into third base in Connie Mack Stadium. And here it is. This is actually from 1961. And what this says is Willie Mays sliding safely into third in the 4th inning of a game in Philadelphia on May 7, 1961, beating the throw from Phillies center fielder Bobby Del Greco to third baseman Bob Sadowski. The Giants defeated the Phillies 7-0. Yeah, of course the Giants defeated the Phillies. The Phillies had a terrible they were terrible in 1961. They were 8th place of 8 teams with a record of 47 and 107. So at any rate, it's kind of a neat photo though. You can see there's watermarks there from the photo service where I borrowed the photo. The umpire's right in there, really close. You look in the stands, by the way, you can see almost nobody there. I guess, If you're a terrible team, people don't show up. But a pretty exciting little photo there. Here's another photo of Willie Mays sliding into second base. This is in 1964. And what this says is Giants' Willie Mays is out in a cloud of dust here as he tried to stretch a hit to left into a double in the 8th inning. Wes Covington threw to Philadelphia's second baseman Cookie Rojas for the out. One of the brighter moments for the home team, as of course they lost to the Giants. They're losing to the Giants even on a year. The Phillies had like 92 wins in 1964. Interesting thing here is he's sliding wide. You can see that he's sliding a couple feet wide. Rojas has the ball apparently already. He's getting ready to tag. This is what's called a hook slide, where you slide a little wide. You hope that the fielder goes for your feet, and in the meantime, you can get your hand in there to be safe. That was kind of a cool photo. You can see the dust, the umpires running over, we can see. But he was out on this play. I guess Rojas maybe he might have tagged his foot before the hand got in there, or maybe he tagged the hand. We will probably never know exactly how that tag was made. But the hook slide, oh, and by the way, you'll notice every photo I've seen of Mays sliding is him sliding feet first. And back then, and before the 60s, apparently most players slid feet first. Almost all slides were feet first. But in the 70s and 80s, people started sliding more head first. And I believe there's even a study or two that has shown now that it's actually, you can save a split second. You might get there a split second sliding head first. And I think Pete Rose was responsible for popularizing the head first slide. But you may have seen a hook slide recently in Philadelphia. This famous play from a couple weeks ago. Look at that. Two guys sliding. They're both to the right of the base. And they both reached back with their left hand to score. This amazing, amazing play. I was really happy to be able to get a photo of this in this presentation. And here we go. Just amazing. Two guys just a couple feet away from each other. And you can see they're sliding wide and they're using the hand. And of course, this isn't like sliding into second, as Mays was doing to try to lure the guy to tag on the feet. This is just so the catcher doesn't have much to tag. The only thing he can tag is the hand. That's the closest thing. And of course, they were both safe on this play. An amazing play. But let's get back to 1966. The first game of the series, Larry Jackson, a complete game shutout. Phillies win 5-0. This was on Thursday, the Thursday game. Gaylord Perry took the loss. He left the game in the 4th. Now, the odd thing is, Gaylord Perry pitched on Tuesday night in the All-Star game. And here they have him starting a game on Thursday. A lot of teams back then, they only had four starters in their rotation, so you pitched a lot if you were a starter. He pitched on the 9th, the 12th, and the 14th. But the Phillies got to him, and after the game, his record was 12-2. By the way, Perry was 4th in MLB history in innings pitched. So Gaylord Perry could pitch a lot. It wasn't a big problem for him. But on this night, perhaps he had gone past his limit. And after the game, that they were tied to the Giants were tied with the Pirates for first, because apparently the Pirates won on Thursday. By the way, you may wonder, where did the Phillies get Larry Jackson? Well, you probably aren't wondering. You probably already know. They got him from the Cubs. And on April 21st, 1966, a infamous trade in Philadelphia Phillies history, where they traded Ferguson Jenkins, who was like a farmhand at the time. He'd only had 8 appearances with the Phillies at this point, going back to 65. He might have even been at the minors at the time of the trade. I'm not sure if he was on the roster or not, but the Phillies apparently thought they needed a couple starting pitchers, and they probably did. They had Bunning. They had Chris Short. They had Rick Wise was actually on the roster from time to time. He was only 20 at the time. They had Ray Culp. They had a guy, Ray Herbert, who had started a bunch of games for them the previous year. But they picked up Jackson and Buell, 2 starting pitchers. And the thing you'll notice here are the ages. These guys were in baseball years. They're fairly ancient, especially Buell, trading these guys in their 20s. Again, Ferguson Jenkins, as you know, went on to become a Hall of Fame pitcher. He won, I think it was 284 games in his career. A terrible, terrible trade for the Phillies. It will go down in infamy. But I think the main attraction for the Cubs at the time was Adolfo Phillips. He ended up playing for another 4 or 5 years. He started with the Cubs for a few years and then sort of trailed off. And I think he was out of the league by the time he was 30. The next game, the Friday night game, this was a big game. Juan Marichal pitched for the Giants and pitched a complete game. It was an 8-1 game. He took his record to 15-4. Bunning took the loss. He gave up a home run to Mays. It was Mays' 21st of the season, and the Giants were back in first. But look at that kick from Marichal. Isn't that amazing? Like, you do not see a kick like that anymore in baseball. Man, it's amazing. The flexibility of that guy, just incredible. And here's the lineup for the Saturday game, the game that I attended. 59 years ago tonight, as a matter of fact. For the Phillies, you see Cookie Rojas playing center field. He normally played second base. So that's kind of important to this game. Johnny Callison, Dick Groat, Dick Allen, Harvey Kuhn, Bill White, Tony Taylor, Bob Uecker getting a start, and Bob Buell's the starting pitcher. And you'll see at the bottom there's a couple of subs that come in later. Gonzalez, Dalrymple, and Phil Linz come in later in the game. They figured pretty prominently. They were good substitutions. You'll see why later. But you'll notice Dick Groat was a starting shortstop. The Phillies at that time, their starting shortstop was Bobby Wine most of the time. But Bobby Wine was hurt most of 66, so he didn't play much. Bill White was new to the Phillies, as was Uecker. And where did they get those guys? This trade in a 65, after the 65 season. The Phillies again trading young guys for old guys. The Phillies were getting older. Pat Corrales, a backup catcher. Art Mahaffey, a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher, a pretty good pitcher at the time, although he didn't do too well the next few seasons and he was out of the league. And Alex Johnson was probably the best thing the Cards got out of that trade. Was eventually the AL batting champion in 1970 for the Angels. Played till 76, had a 288 career batting average. He was up for the Phillies I think in 65, and I think he hit like 300 in a limited time playing. He was a good hitter, and a shame they didn't keep him. But they got two starters, Groat and White, and Bob Uecker, who started some games for the Phillies. The famous Bob Uecker. Amazing. So this was another trade where they're trading young guys for old guys. And they were getting old, the 66 Phillies. Here's some other trades they made that year. In November 29, 65, they traded Ruben Amaro Sr. for Phil Linz. This was a couple of utility infielders. I don't know why they made this trade. Neither of these guys hit a lot, but they could play numerous positions in the infield. They could bunt, they could run, they could throw. At that time in the league in the 60s, apparently, if you could do those things, even if you weren't a power hitter of having any power at all, you could get a job. You know, especially with Mock, because Mock liked bunts. He liked moving runners. You know, he didn't care that much about power. I mean, he liked the home runs, of course, but, you know, if you could move runners, Mock loved you. If you could play multiple positions, Mock loved you. That was Gene Mock's style. Okay, in December, they traded Jack Balcham to the Orioles for Darrell Knowles and Jackie Brandt. This was a good trade for the Phillies. Darrell Knowles was a good relief pitcher. He pitched 69 games for the Phillies that year. He was really their workhorse in the pen. Balcham didn't do that well after the trade. Jackie Brandt was 32 years old. He was near the end of his career, so he was a part-time outfielder. So the Phillies probably won that trade if you were going to judge it that way. Another trade, they got rid of Wes Covington. Apparently, Mauch didn't like Covington, and Covington was really at the end of his career. He didn't do much with the Cubs, and Doug Clemens didn't do much with the Phillies. He was just a reserve outfielder, a pinch hitter. He didn't. He lasted a couple seasons, but he didn't really contribute much. He wasn't a starter, we could say. April 11th, 1966. Here's a weird one. This is April 11th was the end of spring training, by the way. The teams, the major leagues didn't start the regular season until about the middle of April back then. So April 11th, Roger Craig was released by the Reds before the season started, and the Phillies signed him. 36 years old. Oh my God. It was just sort of puzzling that they were getting all of these old guys. Now, Knowles and Doug Clemens weren't that old, but Clemens really didn't contribute much. So Knowles was the only guy in the 20s they really got that year who amounted to much. Harvey Kuhn they picked up from the Cubs in right after the start of the season. Harvey Kuhn was a great player in his day, but he was at the end. Apparently his knees were going bad. We'll talk about some of Harvey Kuhn's what he did a little later. They also picked up Terry Fox from the Tigers, May 6th. They actually purchased these two players. It's kind of weird to say, they purchased a guy, but back then they could do that. They also, oddly, they added 5 players from the 64 Cardinals, which is kind of a shock to me because I guess most of you know what happened with the 64 Cardinals. They beat the Phillies out right at the end of the season. It was a disaster, a tragedy, something I don't like to think about. It was the first year I started following baseball, and the worst thing that could happen happened, right? Phillies were, I don't want to talk about it. Let's not talk about it. But to get 5 players from that Cardinals team really seems odd to me because that would remind you of 64 pretty much every day, right? But that's what they did. Well, some of the things that John Quinn, the general manager at the time, and Mauch did with the roster were really odd. And now, so here's a listing of the players they added for the 66 team after the 65 season. And you can see almost all of them are in their 30s. It was just this weird strategy. I don't know if they were intending to add really old players, but they did. And the players they got rid of that they lost in these trades were mostly in their 30s, except for 2, Covington and Ruben Amaro Sr. So almost all the ones they acquired were in their 30s. I mean, Bob Buell, 37, Grote, 35, Kuhn, 35, Roger Craig, 36. And the only one of any real consequence down here in their 20s that they added was Darryl Knowles. So this was, to me, it was really indicating that they were sort of panicking because they didn't win. They lost the pennant at the very end in 64. They took a step back in 65. They didn't do as well in 65. So they were like, God, we got to win a pennant with this core group of Phillies, which was a really good core group. Callison, Richie Allen, Tony Taylor, Rojas, Bunning, Chris Short. They had a good roster, a core player, but they added 12 players. There's a 25-man team. they got rid of half the team, and they replaced half the team. That was amazing to do. I've never seen any team do something that drastic. Now, I call that the opposite of the process because we know the process was from Sam Hinkie was to get young and lose now so you can build for the future through the draft. What the Phillies were trying to do is win now. So sign these accomplished but over-the-hill vets. So instead of get young and lose now, it was get old and win now. So they were risking the future. It really seems like a desperation move. I've never seen it anyplace else. As I said, after coming close in 64, they took a step back in 65. They were finished in 6th place with a winning record. I mean, they weren't a bad team. So were they thinking that 66 was their last chance? Maybe. It seems that they were. I guess they thought these older guys were still good players. If they played part-time, they could help the team out, help the team get over the hump. And immediately after that Cubs trade, um, Stan Hochman started calling the team the Wheeze Kids. This is the first usage that I found in 66 of the term the Wheeze Kids. It's April 26th. That's just 5 days after the trade that sent Ferguson Jenkins to the Cubs. And and he published a column the next day talking about how the Phillies have gotten really old and why he's calling them the Wheeze Kids. And it says here, Bill DeWitt, who was the owner of the Reds, by the way, says the Phillies appear to be trying to gather the oldest team in baseball. Hochman writes, what the Phillies appear to be doing is trying to win a pennant with a dynasty almost as old as the Ming Dynasty. So, hey, when you're talking about age, the jokes just write themselves, don't they? The Weeds Kids creak back into action here tonight against the Mets, he wrote. And DeWitt said out loud what everyone has been thinking, that the Phillies are making a no-holds-barred bid for the pennant in 66. And never mind about the future. And hey, the Phillies are facing that same kind of thing now, aren't they? Where the fan base wants them to trade those young prospects for older proven players. Let's hope it works out. Let's hope it works out better than it did for the 66 Phillies. Here's another columnist, Larry Merchant, wrote this in the Daily News at about that time. The laughter at Connie Mack will turn to whimpers if all the ancients the Phillies are collecting turn out to be Don Hoax. Don Hoak, by the way, was a third baseman the Phillies acquired in I guess it was 62 and into 63, and it didn't work out. He was what the fans might call a bum. With 6 pitchers in their mid to late 30s and 3 regulars in their early to mid 30s, the Phillies needed geriatrician instead of a trainer. Ha, ha, ha. By turning Connie Mack Stadium into a rest home, like I said, these jokes write themselves. It is evident that Quinn and Mock have gone just about as far as they can to bring a pennant to town. If this doesn't do it, it's Geritol for the Phillies and Hemlock for management. And that's true. I'm sure that's what they felt. I have not seen any quotes from Quinn or Mock about these trades, about this aging of the Phillies, the Wheeze Kids. But hey, Hemlock for management means they were worried about their jobs. And Hochman, by the way, just a little digression here, he used the term Wheeze Kids again for the 83 Phillies who made it to the World Series. You might remember there were a lot of articles written about the Phillies in the national media when they made it to the World Series in 83 because the team was so old. Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez, they were all ancient players. Look at all these players on the Phillies roster who were in their 30s, some of them in their late 30s. Ron Reed was 40. Ron Reed, I believe, has the most appearances for the Phillies in history. I'm not sure about that, but I think he does. The nickname stuck with the 83 Phillies. They lost to the Orioles in 5 games, as we know, sadly. But they were a little bit older than the 66 team. But I think we can say the 66 Phillies were the original Wheeze Kids. And I'm sure most of you know that this is a joke on the name the Whiz Kids from the 1950s Phillies, who were a fairly young team who made it to the World Series. So, but I actually found this phrase, the Wheeze Kids, a few times in the 50s when columnists would write about the Phillies and say, hey, are the Phillies going to be the Whiz Kids this year, or are they going to be the Wheeze Kids? So it was actually an old joke that Hochman picked up on and used twice for 2 teams. So get back to the game. For July 16th, 1966, the starters were Bob Buell and Ray Sadecki. And these were, you can see their records for 1966 below here. They didn't have good records those years, but these were 2 really good pitchers. Buell was in the league for 15 years. Sadecki was in the league for 18 years. They both pitched, I think they both started over 300 games, 2,500 innings pitched. They were really, really good players. Sadecki, by the way, had been picked up for the Giants earlier that season for Orlando Cepeda, a future Hall of Famer. Of course, Orlando Cepeda was a very good player at that time. So they switched this very good player for a guy, you know, Sadecki, who ended up pitching, I think, till, gosh, I think he pitched till like 1980 or something. He really had a good career, not a Hall of Fame career, of course, but he was, every team needs guys like Sadecki. But, when you're traded for a Hall of Famer, that follows you around, doesn't it? Okay, this game on Saturday, July 16th, 1:37 p.m. start time. You might wonder, and I often did, why do games start at these odd times? And the reason is because of television, of course. So if the broadcast goes on at 1:30, they have 7 minutes for a little bit of a pregame and to run a bunch of commercials by you. So they're making money, right? The attendance, I had seen this attendance of close to 15,000 in numerous box scores for the game. And I knew that wasn't right, as a matter of fact, because I knew there was more than 15,000 people in that stadium. That was one of the things I actually remembered about the game. But and then I saw in an Oakland newspaper about the game. The Oakland newspaper had, reporters in Philadelphia covering the Giants, that there was a promotion with free tickets for kids and women. And that the actual attendance that day was over 31,000. So there were a lot of people there. Capacity for the stadium, for Connie Mack Stadium at the time, was 33,608. So almost full. But the temperature, 82 degrees at game time, partly cloudy, humidity 30%. Perfect weather for a baseball game. I don't remember being hot at that stadium. And on the third base side, we might have been in the sun for a lot of that day, but it wasn't really too bad. And one thing to note here is both teams had double headers the next day. The Giants at Pittsburgh and the Dodgers were coming into Philly for a doubleheader. So a lot of subs played in this game. They had some subs in their lineups. Uecker, for instance, was a sub. So they were playing a lot of baseball in a short period of time after that All-Star game. Now, this is interesting. This is from the second inning. There was no scoring in the first inning. A second inning, Jim Ray Hart leads off with a double. There's an error by Rojas in center field, who was normally the second baseman, but Mock liked to play people at different positions. And so he had an error, and Jim Ray Hart advanced to third. And I'll read the caption of what happens next. Richie Allen, Phillies third baseman, puts tag on the arm of Jim Ray Hart of the San Francisco Giants to complete a double play after pitcher Bob Buell made a leaping grab of a ball hit by catcher Tom Holler. So apparently Holler hit like a line drive. Buell caught it, leaped and caught it, and threw to third and caught him off the base. Caught Hart off the base. And you can see Richie Allen is tagging him on the arm. He's got the glove closed, so the ball's in the glove. And you can see in this photo, poor quality photo, but Hart's foot is still up. He has not put his foot down on the base. And it's kind of a neat photo, isn't it? There's some dust down here. Here's the umpire really close. And you can see the stands are full. And you can see several women. There's a woman, I believe. Looks like that could be my grandmother. There's a woman. There's a woman. There's a lot of women. I don't see too many kids. I guess they put all the kids in the bleachers, and the women, I guess these women got tickets early, so they got to sit close to the field. There's a woman. So kind of neat. Now, this photo, by the way, was distributed all over the country by the AP with the AP story, and it appeared in many newspapers across the country. And it's kind of odd because it wasn't like a real determining play in this game. It was just a double play, that happened in the first inning, an unusual double play. But apparently an AP editor sent it out. And, I looked for articles in a couple small California newspapers, and they printed this photo with a small article about the game. So I've actually written to the AP. I'd like to get the original photo. That would be kind of cool to have that. But I haven't heard back from them. And you'll see it's, as I said, it's low quality. I'm sure there was an original photo, then it was in the newspaper, you lose quality. And then these newspapers, they were scanned to photographed to microfiche. So if you went to a library in the 80s or 90s or 70s to try to do some research in some newspapers, you were given rolls of microfiche that you threaded through a machine to look at the newspapers. So then what happened, of course, in the 2000s, that microfiche got scanned. So when you look at newspapers.com, in a lot of cases, what you're looking at is scanned microfiche. So it's and the photos that were in the microfiche were not good quality at all. You lost a lot of quality going from a newspaper to microfiche. And so you end up with photos that look like this. This is what we have left. I don't know, as I said, I don't know if the AP actually has any photos from this game left or not. I hope they do, but I don't know. So, okay, no scoring to the top of the fourth when Jim Davenport, he was mostly an infielder. He could play left field and such, but he is starting third baseman that day. He hits a home run off the upper deck facing in left center. So he really got a hold of it. And then Mays doubles and McCovey drove him in with a single. So the Giants are up 2-0. Bottom of the fourth, however, Grote walks. Dick Allen singles. Grote goes to third, takes the extra base. And Kuhn hits a fly ball to left, and Grote tags and scores. Cool, 2-1. That's, I guess we could call that small ball, huh? I mean, they got one hit, a single, and they got a run out of it. That's cool. That's Gene Mauch baseball right there. Okay, fifth inning, Uecker solo home run, his last homer of the season. There's a photo of Uecker. Pretty good size schnoz on him. Pretty tall guy. I think he's like 6'2" or something, with Clay Dalrymple. Uecker caught 78 games that year. So that was the most playing that he got in his career. His career ended in 67. He had a 200 career batting average. So he was a defensive replacement, basically, and total of 14 home runs. This was his best season, by the way, in 1966, 78 games, 237 plate appearances, 43 hits, 7 home runs, 30 RBIs. By far his best season. And as a side note, Uecker hit 2 home runs off of Sadecki in 1966. Sadecki, I'm sure Uecker never forgot that, and Sadecki probably never forgot that either. But I've got this. Let's see if this will work.
Is it true that you gave the general manager, John Quinn, an ultimatum? Play me or trade me?
I told him, play me, trade me, or I'll quit. The Phillies trade Bob Uecker. All over town, people are incredulous. Why would they do it?
We finally found somebody that was taking off our hands. We begged and we pleaded. We threatened people. We bribed them. And we finally got somebody to take him off our hands. And it helped us. It helped us a lot.
The people in Philadelphia were vehement. The Schuylkill River dried up. It was unbelievable. Bob Uecker Day, it was hell on a day off. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. It was like myself and the ground crew guys standing at home plate, eating hard-boiled eggs and drinking beer and stuff. It was a tremendous. I don't like to talk about that stuff because it kind of gets me. That's a beautiful day, Bob Uecker Day.
So Bob Uecker Day. Hey, I don't remember that. It was on a day off. Him and the grounds crew drinking beer and eating hard-boiled eggs at home plate. Top of the sixth. Okay, here we go. Mays singles off of Buell. The ball goes through the legs of Cookie Rojas in center field for a 2-base error. Rojas's second error of the day. And guess what? Mays slides into third ahead of the throw. So, the mythical triple that I thought I saw Willie Mays hit, it was actually a single and a 2-base error. So there you go. So to any of those people out there who I told, that I said I saw a Willie Mays triple, I was wrong, sadly. But if Cookie Rojas hadn't have made that error, we would not be here today. So, any rate, McCovey then singled and Mays scored. I guess that in the course of thousands of games, that probably happened thousands of times, right? McCovey batted in Mays. Then Hart reached on an error by White. The second error of the inning. McCovey goes to second. Then Holler singles. And the Inquirer wrote, McCovey scored on the hit, and when the throw skipped through Uecker for an error, Uecker, supposed to be a defensive catcher, Hart also came home on an unearned run. So 3 Philly errors in the inning, and the Giants are now leading 5-2. Ouch.
I don't think so.
Okay. I found this picture of Cookie Rojas since he made errors that day. I thought this was pretty amusing. Cookie the glove. This is kind of a neat photo, by the way. There's 7 gloves in this photo. So that means there has to be 3 people behind Cookie Rojas. And they somehow line them up so you couldn't see any of them. There's Cookie's gloves, and then there's 5 more. So there has to be 3 people, unless there's some person standing behind him who happen to have three arms. So, bottom of the 6th, Kuhn singles. White homers to right, his 16th of the season. Bill White coming through for the Phillies. And Sadecki is replaced by a guy named Lindy McDaniel, and the Giants' lead is down to 5-4. Top of the 9th, Dalrymple replaces Uecker at catcher. Tony Gonzalez replaces Rojas in center field. Rojas, I guess Gene Mauch liked Rojas, so he replaced Tony Taylor at second with Rojas. Rojas stayed in the game. And Phil Linz replaced Grote at shortstop. And Darrell Knowles was pitching. He pitched the Giants down in order in the 9th. So we go to the bottom of the 9th. It's 5-4. Tony Gonzalez leads off the 9th with a single. There's a picture of Tony, 5'9", 170 from Cuba, 11 years in the majors, 286 career batting average, 1,485 hits. Pretty good career for a 5'9" guy. Jackie Brandt pitch hits for Knowles. Bunts Gonzalez to second. There's our small ball. So we got a guy on second with 1 out. Rojas comes up, grounds out to shortstop. Now, I don't know if it was, I didn't read anything about this. How did Gonzalez get to third? But maybe it was a slow roller. But Gonzalez took off on contact. He gets the third on the ground out. So now we've got 2 outs, a man on third. Callison, intentional walk. 2 outs, man on third and first. Phil Linz comes up. He's the Phillies' weakest batter. He had a OPS that year less than 500. You just don't see that much anymore. But back in the 60s, you know, utility infielders didn't have to hit a lot to make the team. And so we have Linz, and Lindsey is pitching. So it's Linz versus Lindsey. And Linz hits a high chopper to third. It bounces off of Davenport's glove, and Gonzalez scores. Tied. Linz said after the game, I thought he'd catch it. It was, well, a miracle. And you can see his face here. He looks like he's kind of confused. But there's Phil Linz. It was scored a single. I guess that's the home team scoring, huh? It hits the third baseman's glove, and it still scored a single. So tie score. The next batter up was out on a ground out, and we're going into extra innings. Cool. Of course, by now, the Cub Scouts are like really exhausted and just want to go home. None of the Cub Scouts cared who won the game. Okay, extra innings. Here's some information. Phil's bringing Terry Fox, the relief pitcher they got from Detroit in May. Fox and Lindsey go inning after inning, not allowing any runs. They each pitched 6 innings in relief. Lindsey, by the way, was a really good relief pitcher. 516 games, 110 saves, 817 innings pitched with a career ERA of 2.85. He was with the Giants till 1970, and then surprisingly, he pitched 22 games with the Phillies in 74. I don't remember that, but that's what Baseball Reference says. So Fox pitched out of several jams in the extra innings. In the 11th, the first 2 batters singled against Fox. First and third, no outs. Bad situation. Basically, at this point, you're hoping to hold them to 1 run, right? The Phillies infield came in, the next batter hit into a double play. and Holler, who was on third, did not go. So probably could have scored. But again, the infield came in, so they were going to contest it if he had gone. But the Inquirer called that a base running boner. The San Francisco paper had a paragraph or two trying to justify why that was a good move for Holler not to go. But the next batter flew out and the inning was over, still tied. 13th inning, McCovey doubles. But he's thrown out at third on a bunt fielded by Fox. I'm sure that's an exciting play, but we don't have video to confirm. Anyway, this is how the inning ended. According to the San Francisco Examiner, Gonzalez made the final play of the 13th inning with a sensational running catch of a loose drive to right center. It wasn't really the final play of the 13th inning. It was the final play of the top of the 13th inning. So Gonzalez, Mock putting Gonzalez in, that was probably the best thing he did in this game. That was probably his best managerial move. That and bringing in Terry Fox. Okay, bottom of the 15th, still tied 5-5. And I have photos for the next few plays here, all off of microfiche scans from newspapers.com. The Inquirer ran 4 photos of the next 4 plays, and you'll see all 4 of them. So the Giants replaced Lindsay with Joe Gibbon and White singles. And we have a caption here that says, Bill White's bat traces a classic follow-through as he singles in the 15th. Now, to me, that doesn't look like a classic follow-through, to tell you the truth. I mean, it looks like his shoulder's bumping into his face. That looks like a weird follow-through. But hey, he hit a single. Who cares? Okay, Dalrymple comes up, bunts White to second. Man, bunting was big with Mock, and Dalrymple could do it. So White's on second with 1 out. Next batter, Gonzalez singles to left. And I'll read what the Inquirer wrote. When Gonzalez stroked the single to left field, Jim Hart, normally the Giants' third baseman, Jim Hart was playing left, fumbled the ball. When the ball was hit, White was forced to hesitate to make sure it wouldn't be picked up in the infield. By the way, there's a normal follow-through, right, on Gonzalez. His shoulders not punching him in the face. Okay, here's the final photo. White started, stopped, then took off again as the ball went into left field. Hart charged in and the ball bounced up to his glove and then out again. White was well on his way home to end the 3-hour and 48-minute game. And here's White crossing home plate with a disgusted Tom Holler. Tom Holler, by the way, was 6'4", 190 pounds. Big, tall, skinny guy. Okay, so the Phillies win in 15 innings. All right. The Cub Scouts, I don't think, appreciated that. They just wanted to go home at this point. And we all just funneled out, found our rides home. It was the longest game of the season. Fox went 6 innings for the W. And here he is in his Phillies card. And the Inquirer called the game a thrilling come-from-behind triumph. And it was. I just wish I had watched it or remembered it. And they called Fox a matinee idol. And here's one of the articles the next day in the Inquirer, Frank Dolson, where he's referred to as a matinee idol. And I actually got in touch with Terry Fox. I realized he was alive. And I knew he was living in New Iberia because I had found a newspaper article that mentioned him in the sports section in New Iberia. Somebody had written a little profile about him. And I got in touch with that sports writer. He got in touch with Terry. And I got his phone number, and I had a few conversations with Terry. It was really great. And he said about the game, he said, I remember the game because it went extra innings and we were able to control it and win. That made a big difference. I did what the Phillies got me for. The Giants were trying to get to the championship. I also remember the umpire telling me afterwards that it was the best game he had ever seen. Well, that's good praise, huh? So that was pretty cool. I mean, Terry didn't remember the details of the game, as I didn't remember the details of the game. But I did send him. I'd sent him a printout of the box score. I sent him a printout of the Inquirer articles, the Bulletin articles, the San Francisco Examiner articles. He was really happy to get that. And he sent me, in return, about a dozen 8x10 glossy autograph photos. So if anybody would like an autographed photo of Terry Fox, please let me know. I can hook you up. But this was the longest appearance for Fox with the Phillies that year, but not the longest of his career. In 62, in his second year in the majors, the Yankees at Detroit, the game went 22 innings. It was a 7-hour game. Fox pitched 8 innings with no runs allowed. He probably pitched more innings than the starter. But things were different in the 60s and the 50s and such, relievers would pitch many innings if necessary. But the Yankees won in the 22nd. Anyway, on June 11th, 1963, he pitched 7 1/3 innings of a 15-inning game. But he gave up 2 home runs in the top of the 15th and took the loss against the Red Sox. And since we're talking about Terry and home runs, on September 17th, 1961, he gave up a home run in the 12th to Roger Maris, his 58th of the season. And most of you probably know what Roger Maris did that year. On the last game of the season, October 1st, he hit his 61st. It was against the Red Sox, and the Yankees won the game, 1-0. It was in the 4th inning. Set a new record. He beat Babe Ruth's record of 60 home runs from 1927. So that was every home run Maris hit in the September of that year was an event, right? It was covered by the media. And so, it was sad for Terry, but it was, a little bit of infamy for him. He was a control pitcher. And this is what he said about his pitching. I wasn't an overpowering pitcher, but I could throw a curveball, a good changeup, and a sinker type pitch. I think his fastball was like 90. I don't think he had, maybe even 89. It wasn't a lot. I kept the ball low and I threw a lot of strikes. The infielders knew how I pitched and they expected the ball to be hit on the ground. Well, if you could do that, you could be in the majors today. 7 MLB seasons, faced over 1,600 batters, only 124 walks, 12 hit by pitch, 6 wild pitches. Of all those pitches, only 6 wild pitches. 2.99 career ERA. Led the Tigers in saves for 3 years before coming to the Phillies. Okay, so after the game, the Phils were 48-40, still in contention, 6 games behind the Giants. They had picked up a game on the Giants. The Phils split with the Dodgers the next day and won on Monday in a 4-0 game over Koufax. Koufax was 16-5 at the time. He would eventually go for the season. He went 27-9, and Koufax won his 3rd Major League Cy Young Award in '66. And by the way, back in '66, they only gave out 1 Cy Young Award each year. It was called the ML Cy Young Award. In '67, they started giving out an AL and an NL. So in '66, only 1 player in all of Major Leagues would get the Cy Young Award. And that was Koufax's 3rd Cy Young Award in 4 years. But they beat him on Monday. And it was Larry Jackson was the winning pitcher. It was his 2nd straight shutout. Amazing. Larry Jackson had 5 shutouts for the Phillies that year. But the Phillies finished 66, 87, and 75 in 4th place. They just adding all these guys, these over the hill, but really accomplished players just did not work. The process did not work, and the opposite of the process did not work here in Philadelphia. After the game, the Giants were still in first by 1 game because the Pirates also lost that Saturday. But the Giants dropped 2 to the Pirates the next day in Pittsburgh to fall 1 game out. But they stayed in first or within 1 game of first until early September when the Dodgers caught them. And the Dodgers were really hot in September, and they ended up winning the pennant. In that year, there were 10 teams. And if you were in first place, you won the pennant and you were going to the World Series, right? Giants finished in 2nd place from 65 to 69. So, yeah, the Phillies, we have a lot of reasons to cry about the Phillies in the 60s. But the Giants, that must be rough. 5 years in a row, not getting to not making it to first. And the Dodgers, by the way, lost the World Series 4 games to 0 to the Orioles. They lost 2 games, 1-0, including one that Koufax started. So the Orioles, of course, had a historically great pitching staff as the Dodgers did. So that was quite a series. But it's really shocking that the Dodgers didn't win any games that series. Here's the final standings from 66. So, and what happened to the Wheeze kids? What happened to these guys the Phillies acquired for 66? Let's talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll be done. Bob Buell, as we know, he went 6-8 for the Phillies in 66. He then was with the team in spring training in 67. He came north with the team. He pitched 3 innings and they released him. 3 innings in 67. He got released and retired. I don't know what happened. I didn't really investigate it. Maybe he requested his release. I don't know. But 3 innings. I mean, all this preparation for the season that a pitcher does. Phew, weird. He had a 15-year career, 3.55 career ERA, 20 shutouts, 11 complete games in his career, 166 and 132. That ain't too bad. Larry Jackson pitched for the Phillies through 68. His record was 41 and 45, 5 shutouts for the Phils in 66. Retired after the 68 season. 14-year career, 5 All-Star games. Best year was in 64 when he went 24 and 11 for the Cubs, second in the Cy Young voting. I believe it was a guy, was it Dean Chance, won the Cy Young in 64. He was from the American League, but again, they only gave out 1 Cy Young in 64. If they had given out NL and AL Cy Youngs, Larry Jackson would have gotten one, and he was certainly deserving. He was a great pitcher. 194 wins, 3.40 career ERA, over 3,000, close to 3,300 innings pitched, 37 shutouts. Amazing. Bill White stayed with the Phillies through 68. He had 22 home runs and 103 RBIs in 66. Really a great player. He was traded back to St. Louis in April of 69. Played sparingly and retired. 8 All-Star games, 7 Gold Gloves, 1,700 hits, over 200 home runs, a 286 career batting average. And coincidentally, he started his career in with the Giants. After his career, he got into broadcasting. Most of you probably know he had a job in Philly for a short period of time. He eventually ended up with the Yankees, and he was an analyst or something on Yankees games for like 17 years. Then he was the president of the National League. First person of color to hold an executive position in the Major League Baseball. Amazing. What a great, great guy. Dick Groat, another amazing player that the Phillies only had for like 1.5 years. He was an All-American at Duke in baseball and basketball. And he played in the NBA in 1953. You can look it up. He was 5'11" point guard. 15-year MLB career, 286 career batting average, over 2,100 hits. A lot of these guys, their career was interrupted by military service in the Korean War. So even Mays was in the military at the time. Harvey Kuhn, Dick Groat. So they lost a year or two on their stats. Rookie of the Year in 52, NL MVP in 1960 when he hit 325 for the Pirates. MVP runner-up in 63 with the Cardinals. 8 All-Star games. In June 22nd, 1967, the Phillies sold him to the Giants. I guess Bobby Wine was back. They didn't need Groat. Maybe Groat wasn't happy and whatever. He played 34 Giants games for the Giants and retired. He is in the college basketball, the college baseball, and the Pirates Halls of Fame. But not Cooperstown, unfortunately. And White's not in Cooperstown either. These guys all got votes, but they didn't make it. Including Harvey Kuhn got votes, but he didn't make it. So these were like really good players, but not, they're not baseball legends. Maybe they're legends, but they're not Hall of Famers, unfortunately. Harvey Kuhn, he was a hitting machine. He hit 296 for the Phillies in 66. He had 3 hits that game, by the way. None of them, were determined hit-in runs or anything, but 3 hits, 15-year career, over almost 2,100 hits, 303 career batting average, 1953 AL Rookie of the Year, 8-time All-Star. 59 won the batting title for the Tigers, 353. Man, that's a lot of hits. Led the AL in hits for 4 seasons in the 50s. Jeez. Released after the 66 season. Coached the 1982 Brewers. He got into coaching, and the Brewers went to the World Series that year. They were in the AL that year, and the Cardinals won the World Series that time 4-3. In fact, they won the World Series against the Yankees, I think it was, in 64, 4-3. Personally, I hate the Cardinals. Okay, Roger Craig, what happened to him? 14 relief appearances for the Phillies in 66 with an ERA of 5.56. Batting was down in the 60s in Major League Baseball. The average batting average was like 4.45 or something. That's pretty low, historically speaking. So to have a 5.56 ERA, you're just not going to be in the league very long. And that was the end for Roger Craig. So he was released on July 23, a week after the game that I was at. But he played 12 years, and then he coached for 25 years after that. I think he coached many years for the San Francisco Giants. He was considered a bit of a pitching guru. I think he wrote a book or 2 about pitching. Ray Herbert, he was acquired before the 65 season by the Phillies. He was another old guy. In 65, he started 19 games for the Phillies, but in 66, he was on the roster, but he appeared in only 23 games. Imagine, you have a bullpen, which isn't that big in the 60s, and you pitch a guy only 23 games. I don't quite get it. He was released after the season and retired. He had a 15-year career. Career 4.01 ERA, almost 1,900 innings pitched. Good, but not great player. Just like Buell, just like Sadecki, like a lot of these guys, like Craig, Kuhn, Grote, White. They didn't, they aren't Hall of Famers, but they were damn good players, and teams had to have guys like that to succeed. Jackie Brandt. Look at him. He's with the Phillies. He doesn't look very happy, does he? Like he kind of knows this is basically the end. Oh, boy. Hit 250 for the Phillies in 66. In 67, he was purchased by Houston. And he hit 213 for Houston and retired at the end of the season. Played 11 years. Best years were in Baltimore in the early 60s when he went to 2 All-Star games. And he had a Gold Glove, over 1,000 hits, over 100 home runs. And he coached in the minors for a few years, but then he moved back to Omaha, Nebraska, and became a UPS driver. And from what I read, he really enjoyed that job. And he had that job for the rest of his adult, working life. He's 91 and apparently still alive. I did not try to reach out to him, but if I do this again, I might try to find him. Bob Uecker, oh my goodness, passed away in January, right? Played just 18 games for the Phillies in 67. Then he was traded to Atlanta for another backup catcher, Gene Oliver. Played 62 games with Atlanta and was released at the end of the season. He claimed he was traded to catch Phil Niekro's knuckleball. And he had this joke that he often repeated about catching a knuckleballer, which was the best way to catch a knuckleballer is wait till the ball stops rolling and then pick it up and throw it back to the pitcher. So in 67, his batting average was 150, OPS less than 500. So the Uke, Mr. Baseball, didn't do too good in 67. And most of you know he went on to a long career as an announcer for the Milwaukee Braves and as a TV pitchman for, I guess it was Miller Lite, had a lot of really funny commercials, many comic appearances on late night TV. You can look at appearances by Bob Uecker on the Johnny Carson show on YouTube, if you like. Doug Clemens, he was with the Phillies through 68, but his batting average went down each year, and then he retired after the 68 season at age 29. So Darrell Knowles, another acquisition for the 66 season. As I mentioned, he pitched 69 games that year for the Phillies. He was their workhorse. After the season, the Phillies inexplicably traded him to Washington with cash for Don Locke, a center fielder who played a few years for the Phillies, and he was okay. But Darrell Knowles ended up pitching till like into 1980. The Phillies, it was a guy they should have kept, in my opinion. Over 1,000 innings pitched, 143 saves. They only had him for 1 year. I don't know what was going through John Quinn's mind, but he really liked to make moves. He didn't like to sit still. So Phil Linz, he was with the Phillies till the next year, but he batted only 200 with a less than 500 OPS in 66, 211 batting average in 67 with the Phillies and the Mets. He was traded to the Mets for another utility infielder, Chuck Hiller, who had a 445 OPS that year. These guys just had no power. Phil Linz batted 209 and 68 and retired at the end of the season with the Mets. He hit the highlight of his career was probably with the Yankees. When in the mid-60s, he hit 2 solo home runs for the Yankees in the 64 World Series, which I don't like to mention because it was with Bob Gibson and the Cardinals. He hit a home run off of Bob Gibson in the 9th inning of Game 7, but it didn't matter. The Cardinals were up several runs, and the solo home run didn't make that much difference. And the Cardinals won that World Series 4-3. He batted leadoff in all 7 games of the series, but only batted .226. That's about his career batting average. Okay. I'm not sure why this sentence is down here. That's a mistake on my part. Okay, Terry Fox. What happened to Terry Fox? 66 was his only season with the Phillies and his last season in the majors. And in 66, he had an ERA of 4.47. That wasn't very good. He spent 67 in the minors with the Phillies AAA team, the San Diego Padres. Can you imagine? They had a minor league team 3,000 miles away. So if they called somebody up, the guy wasn't going to get there till probably the next day, and then he was going to have to sleep off the jet lag. But he retired after accumulating shoulder problems. He did not pitch that well with the Padres. Here's his career numbers. Interesting story. He was 1 month short of 6 years service time in the major leagues, and you needed 6 years to get a pension. So in September of 67, he asked the Phillies to please call him up so he could get that last month, and they did not do it. So he did not have enough service time in the major leagues to get that pension. It really would have helped him, but sadly it didn't happen. Uecker. Uecker was the only person I found, the only quotes I found to talk about the 66 season. He mentioned the 66 season in a interview. And he said, at the time, nobody thought that the trade of Ferguson Jenkins was going to be that big of a deal. But Gene Mauch thought that the Phillies would contend with the acquisition of Buell and Jackson. Well, they almost contended, but not quite. They couldn't quite get there. And with Bunning and Chris Short, we had a pretty good pitching staff. They did. We had good power with Callison, Dick Allen, and Bill White. We had a good club. I still can't figure out why we didn't win the pennant. Well, the Giants had a good team. The Dodgers had a really good team. The Pirates had Clemente and Stargell. There were a lot of good teams back then. So, didn't happen. I've never found any quotes about Mauch or Quinn, the general manager, about this strategy, this trading of all of these, accumulating all of these old guys. But in 67, didn't go real well for the Phillies, and the clearance sale started. So this is what happened to the guys they had just acquired the previous year. Kuhn, Herbert, and Craig retired after the offseason. Okay, those were 3 of the guys they accumulated before 66 or into 66. Fox was in the minors, and Knowles was traded before the season started. So that's 5 of them are gone. 5 of the 12 they acquired. And on May 14th, they fell to 7th place in 67. On May 28th, they were down to 8th place. Now, there were 10 teams in the league, in the National League at the time. So they weren't in last, but they were in 8th place. And May through July, as I've described, they got rid of Linz, they got rid of Buell, Grote, Uecker, Brandt. So that's 9 of the 12 players they acquired for 66 were gone by July of 67. They still had White. Who else did they have? I can't remember. They had a couple of the guys. They had, can't remember the guy's name, but they had a couple of them. But this strategy of getting these older but accomplished players, and then if it doesn't work, get rid of them all. Really weird. I mean, your good teams do not go through this type of upheaval and win. They just don't. Good teams have a roster, and they build a roster with good decisions, and they make some changes in the offseason, but they don't get rid of half the roster. But the Phillies did that. So they finished in 5th place. They weren't terrible in 67, but after 67, they traded Bunning. I mean, Bunning went 17 and 15 in 67, 40 starts, 302 innings. That led the league, 253 strikeouts, 2.29 ERA. He was magnificent in 67, and yet they traded him to the Pirates for look at this, 5 guys. Now 4 guys, including Don Money and Woody Fryman. You shouldn't be able to trade Hall of Famers. You just shouldn't. And by 68, June 16th, Mauch was fired. So, upheaval, they're disassembling a good team. Allen and Rojas were traded in December 69 to the Cardinals. That's an infamous trade for Curt Flood. And that went to the Supreme Court because Curt Flood wanted to have some control over where he played. And that led directly to free agency. But Curt Flood lost that case in the Supreme Court. And within another year, Callison, Tony Taylor, and Tony Gonzalez were gone. By the way, Bunning pitched again for the Phillies in 70 and 71. He signed as a free agent. He came back. As did Richie Allen, came back and played for the Phillies. I think it was 74 and 75. But the Phillies won only 82 games in 67, or 2 games over 500, and 68 began a string of 7 losing seasons. These were the bad old years. 68, 76 wins, and you see 63, 73, 67, 59 wins in 72. That's the year they acquired our friend, Steve Carlton. Okay, 75, they have a winning record again, and then they go on to have, 8 really good seasons. But these were the bad old years for the Phillies. Ouch. And you can see, by the way, Quinn was hired, I think, in 59. The Phillies were in last place for 4 straight seasons. And then the 5th year, in 62, they were in 7th. This was around, I think it was 61 or 62 is when they hired Gene Mauch. So Quinn was building a winning team. And you see the height of that was in 64 when they won 92 games. And the less said about the 64 season, the better. So the bad years, 68. John Quinn remained the GM until June 3rd of 72. His final trade was on February 25th. So he went 4 months without a trade. That seems weird, doesn't it? Final trade, February 25, 1972, for, if you want to, you can put it in the comments. And Pierre, let me know what people guess. John Quinn's final trade was for. By the way, there's the 66 Phillies. And I don't know the date of this photo, so I don't know exactly who's in the photo. The personnel was changing so quickly. Who
People are
knows?
guessing Steve Carlton.
Who guessed that?
Paul and Steve.
All right, good guesses. Steve Carlton, a great, great trade. Rick Wise, right? for Steve Carlton. I think there was a contract dispute there, and the Phillies did really well with that. So here's the 66 Phillies. Again, I don't know when this photo was taken, but there's Harvey Kuhn. So it's in at least May or June, because there's Harvey Kuhn. They acquired him, I think, in what was it, late April. So I think that's Uecker right there. There's Richie Allen. I don't know. I've not found a listing of the players in this photo. There's Rojas. I believe there's Tony Gonzalez, the hero of the July 16th game. That might be Tony Taylor right there. I'm not sure. That might be Briggs. I'm not really sure. I really need a listing. This might be Grote. I'm pretty sure that's Grote. But anyway, I haven't found a listing that will tell us exactly who's on this team. But this was during the season. This was not in spring training because, you know, they would have had guys like Adolfo Phillips in the photo. So anyway, that's the end. I would like to thank you all for attending. I'd like to thank Pierre for helping out with this. And I will stop sharing this screen. And Pierre, you could unmute the mics if you like. Boy, we had a lot of people here. This is really great. If there's any comments or questions, you know, raise your hand and we can discuss it. It's only 8:21. I did this in an hour and 20 minutes. I'm shocked. Here, I'll put my hat on. My new Phillies hat. So, a lot of baseball history there, guys. Any comments? Any questions? Anybody remember the 66 Phillies?
Oh,
No, well, Siege, I wouldn't think you would. Oh, that's Paul. Okay.
I do not, definitely not.
Yeah, that's back there a few years. 59 years since that game.
I don't
Oh my
remember ever being
God.
at Connie Mack Stadium.
Yeah, Connie Mack Stadium. Man, I remember as a Cub Scout, I remember walking into the stadium. I don't know if it was the same game, but you know, that was not a great neighborhood. It was dreary, it was dark, it was dirty. You'd get into the stadium, the concourses at the stadium were dark and dirty. Everything was covered with this like gray dust. And then you'd walk through the tunnel and there would be the field. And it would just, I mean, literally, it would take my breath away because the field was just so bright and colorful. It was like a fantasy world that you just walked into, you know, it was just so cool.
Mike, you mentioned that you remember being a Cub Scout. You'd never mentioned that to me. What years were you a scout for the Cubs?
Yeah. Well, I guess that was 66, 67, 65, maybe. Then I was promoted to an actual Boy Scout, a scout for the boys.
Nice.
Yeah.
I only asked, I happened to interview the first black major league scout who was for the Cubs, which was Buck O'Neill.
Really? What year was he a scout?
I believe in 1960 he started.
Wow, cool, interesting.
He was scouting the Negro Leagues a lot.
This is Rick Morris speaking right here, by the way. He has directed and produced a documentary about Negro League baseball about 20 years ago, right? Right, Rick?
In 1995.
And that is out on YouTube. What's the title of that? Rick?
I don't think I put it on YouTube. I think it's on my Vimeo.
It's out there somewhere because I know you sent me a link at one time.
I think it was on my Vimeo page.
Okay, it's in Vimeo.
But I have to put it up very soon.
Okay, what's the title?
Closed Doors, the integration of baseball.
Closed Doors. So yeah, if any of you get a chance to check that out. I see Tom Lewis is asking what's the link. Tom, I can get you that link. I can dig that out of my email and forward that to you. Again, if anybody wants an autographed photo of Terry Fox, let me know. You can frame it. Terry's a great guy. Heck, I'd even give you his phone number if you want to talk to Terry. Terry would probably love to talk. By the way, Terry lives in New Iberia. So here's a trivia question for you. That's New Iberia, Louisiana. He was in the minor leagues in Louisiana, and he met the woman that he married who was from that area, and he retired down there. He worked and lived and retired down there. What is New Iberia famous for? Anybody know?
Ron Guidry.
It's not a baseball thing, by the way.
Tabasco sauce.
Tabasco.
I can't hear people and I can't quite.
Tabasco sauce.
Tabasco sauce. Is that true? I did not know that.
Yes.
Anybody else? Anything else?
I'd like to say Ron Guidry was a great guess.
Yes.
Could be. I would not know.
Yeah, he was from there.
Louisiana
okay.
Lightning.
Yeah.
Good one. Good one, Rick. The James Lee Burke mystery novels are set in New Iberia, Louisiana. The detective is named Dave Robichaux. I've read like 3 or 4 of them, and they're great novels. And his descriptions of that area and the bayou is just wonderful. So if you get a chance to read any of those novels, they're not baseball related, but they are great. The James Lee Burke. Hey, Rock.
Hey, Mike.
Yo.
If you get a chance, put that link up for that documentary up in on the Facebook page.
Okay, yeah,
A lot of people
cool.
would like to see it, myself
Cool.
included.
Okay.
Cool.
Like to thank the Sabre chapter, Philadelphia, for helping organizing this and sponsoring this. Rock's the VP, or is that right, or co-chair of
Vice
that
President
organization?
elect, I don't know if we are, when we officially take our titles, or maybe we already have, I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm the VP of
President has
communications.
advocated, apparently he's got a job. So I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
what's that?
I said the president has abdicated, apparently he's got a job, or he can do it. So I wanted to thank everyone who voted, and that was pretty cool. And we had our election. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure when we take over as positions, but I'm going to be vice president. Matt Albertson is going to be president. And I don't have the list in front of me of the other officers. And then, but yeah, Matt and I had been the co-chairs. So
Yeah. So
up to
now
this
this year
point.
you're going to get some help. I would suggest anybody that's interested in baseball history or baseball statistics, really you should consider joining Sabre. It's a great organization.
And,
Just have to pay a yearly fee and you're in, and there's
Yeah, and
so
it's-
much
it's-
information available to you on the Sabre site. It's really neat. And there's lots of neat functions like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple of these going on tonight, including our chapter member, Mitch Nathanson, is one of the other, some other Zoom talking about his book about Dick Allen, who of course.
Yeah, he's doing a
into that,
presentation
week
for
and
a
half,
couple
so
chapters in Jersey, I believe, tonight.
Looking forward to that. So, I always tell people it's, it was $65. I think they just raised the price to 80. Even at $80 a year, it's still the best money
Okay.
I'm going to spend all year.
Quick question for you guys who's left here about the 66 Phillies. Did anyone attend a Phillies game in 66? Anyone who's on here? Hurley, I know you didn't, but
I was going to Yankee games.
Dan Lilly, I guess you would have been going to Yankee games or Mets games or something like that. Keith, I know you weren't around back then, and Gavin and Tom. Okay. Well, all right. Well, thanks again. Hey, everybody.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Glad you made it.
Thank
Had
you.
fun.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Sure.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike. See you.
I'll see you later.
Uncle Mike.
This is great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure. See ya. It was a lot of fun.
Randolph?
Bye-bye.